Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, The Conjuring, Part 2. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The Warrens are performing a conjuring ritual, as they are invited by the church to detect whether there are ghosts in a house. The wife Lorraine, who was born with the supernatural ability of conjuring, sees the eldest son of the house shot dead all his family a year ago. Following the shots, Lorraine's spirit comes back to the day of the killing. She follows the whisper upstairs. The door to the bedroom opens by itself, and Lorraine enters the bedroom. There, she sees the mother sits by the bed, and the father is shot dead on the bed. A voice keeps whispering in Lorraine's ear, demanding her to kill the mother. Then Lorraine plays the role of the eldest son, shoots the mother emotionlessly, then the two brothers, and at last, the sister who is in her sound sleep. When the conjuring is over, Lorraine gets out of the illusion, frightened and not able to stand up from the floor. Then she sees a little boy on the stairs, who guides her to follow up. Lorraine follows him to the cellar, and the newly dead souls stop her, and turn their heads toward the corner. Following that, Lorraine pulls off the white cloth covering the floor mirror, from which she sees a ghost nun approaches her from her back. Lorraine turns around hastily but finds nobody. When she faces the mirror again, the nun rushes to her front, and grabs her neck. When Lorraine arouses, the nun is gone. Suddenly the furniture collapses to the ground, and the eldest son roars behind. Just when Lorraine is seized by terror, her husband Ed arouses her. Crying in tears, she tells Ed she was almost killed. Back to 2 months ago, in an old house in London, there lives a single mom, Peggy, and her 4 children. Their dad's failure to pay support left them unable to make ends meet. One midnight, Janet suddenly wakes up and finds herself lying on the floor. Her sister is woken up by bangs on the door. She checks it but sees no one, before she sees Janet walking up from downstairs. It puzzles the girls who banged on the door. One night the sister wakes up and finds Janet sitting on the bed, with 2 voices talking inside her body. Thinking Janet must be sleepwalking, the sister soothes her and gets her back to sleep. Soon after, Janet rouses and shouts, "Keep away from us," and then falls asleep again. The brother comes downstairs to drink water, when he hears noises from the yard. He stares through the window and sees the swing swinging by itself. Maybe it's wind, thinks the boy to himself, and he goes upstairs. His toy truck moves by itself and blocks the way. When the boys push it back to the tent, a man comes out of it. The frightened boy screams and runs to Mom. But Mom finds no one in the tent. From downstairs, noises come again. Peggy asks the boy to go back to his bedroom, while she creeps downstairs. She turns on the light, and finds Janet sitting on the sofa in the corner. She wakes up and tells Mom she sleepwalked again. Peggy finds she has got a fever, so she helps Janet back to sleep and tells her not to go to school tomorrow. The next day it rains outside, and Janet stays alone at home. When she turns on the TV, the remote changes channels by itself. Before she can reach the remote, it has gone. When Janet goes to answer the phone, she sees the remote on the sofa. Frightened, Janet puts down the phone, catches the remote immediately. When thunder breaks off the signal, Janet adjusts the antenna, and she sees the reflection of an old man sitting on the worn-out sofa. She turns around hastily and sees the remote falling down from the sofa. While she stares at the remote in panic, the old man appears and shouts toward her ear, "My house." Horrified, Janet falls to the floor, then the old man disappears. That night before she sleeps, she ties herself to the bed with a rope. But it doesn't stop the ghost. At midnight, Janet is awakened again, and finds herself lying on the floor. There are slams on the door. Trembling, she opens the door and sees nobody. The light stops working, so Janet picks up the flashlight and checks downstairs. There she sees the worn-out sofa rocking itself. She runs hastily back, and blocks the door with a chair. But when she gets on bed, the chairs move itself to the bedside. The door is open, and footsteps approach. While Janet hides in the quilt, shaking all over, someone pulls off the quilt, and bites her on the shoulder. She screams and writhes in pain. Her sister is also awakened, and their beds are shaking fiercely. Mom hears their screams, and rushes in. She finds on Janet's shoulder a mark of biting. She thinks the sisters are fighting, until the closet hits the door by itself. So Peggy and her 4 children run to their neighbors. The neighbor goes to check their house, but finds nothing abnormal. He calls the police, who see with their own eyes the chair moving by itself, which is beyond their understanding. The policewoman suggests asking for help from the church. In the present day, The Warrens are plagued by ghosts, after seeing in his dream the ghost nun his wife has seen. Ed paints the nun's photo and hangs it on the wall. One day, daughter also sees the ghost nun. She asks mom whether she knows this ghost nun. Lorraine asks her daughter to hide, and she follows the nun to the study room, where she finds the CD automatically playing with him. Sensing danger, she attempts to flee, but the nun closes all the exits. She moves to the painting of the photo and throws it onto Janet. Both Lorraine and the nun break the wall and enter the cellar, where the Warrens conduct Conjuring. There Lorraine sees Ed, and the sharp end of a stub thrust into his chest. Woken by her daughter, Lorraine finds what just happened is only her illusion. But she has picked up the Bible, and scribbled the nun's name hurriedly. She realizes the ghost was warning her not to interfere. After Peggy accepted an interview so as to ask for help, the news about the haunting house spread quickly. Many journalists come to interview and record the two girls. During one interview, Janet is possessed by the old man. The old man speaks within her that his name is Bill and is stricken with a stroke. He died sitting on the worn-out chair at the age of 72. On hearing this, the journalists are too frightened to speak. After a while, Janet arouses from the possession, but the ghost's infestation continues. One night, Janet is possessed again, though they all sleep in the neighbors, and she almost kills her mom and siblings. When the possession is over, Janet falls and convulses. The event has caused an enormous impact, so the church turns to the Warrens for help. Lorraine wants to quit Conjuring since she saw the omen of her husband's death, but it persuades her to help the family. So they go to the house, and only Peggy and Janet are at home. There are sounds of furniture collapsing night after night. The crossings presented by the neighbors are hanging up on the wall. Peggy locks the door with a heavy iron chain. The Warrens ask Janet to sit on the worn-out chair, and prepare to record her possession by Bill. Bill asks them to turn around before he infests. To avoid Janet from pretending, Ed watches her taking a mouthful of water. Ed asks Bill why he besieges Peggy and her children. Bill answers he comes back to the house to see his family, but they are all gone. Ed fails to persuade Bill to leave. Ed then takes out a crossing, pointing it toward the corner where Janet sits. Shrieking, the ghost flees from inside Janet's body. The Warrens stay and find things get worse. One night, Janet ties herself to the bed with a rope. At midnight, Bill enters the living room whistling. Janet wakes up to find herself adsorbed onto the ceiling. The old man comes upstairs, pulls her over through the wall, and throws her onto the floor. Then the crossings on the wall begin to turn upside down. When Bill lunges at Janet to grab her, her scream wakes her mom up. Looking through the door gap, Peggy finds Janet trapped in the room locked by the heavy chain, and the horrible face of Bill. As Janet is suffocating, Ed rushes over, and asks her to locate the key. When the adults unlock the chain and rescue Janet, Janet cries and tells them she saw the old man Bill. The next day, the Warrens meet the journalists at a restaurant. After investigation, they find what Bill said is all true. But still there is not enough evidence of infestation and possession. Though a female journalist claims Janet lies, the Warrens choose to believe what Peggy and her children say. The Warrens take the journalists to Peggy's home. They also bring back the other 3 kids, knowing what Janet needs most is support from her family. When Peggy asks Ed to repair the water valve in the cellar, Bill follows them to the cellar and bites on Peggy's arm. Ed finds a piece of false teeth from the water, and it matches the biting mark. Upstairs, there's sound from the kitchen. The 2 sisters dare not to move into the living room. The boy wants to stop the ghost from bullying his sisters. So he walks to the kitchen alone. There he finds all the knives thrust onto the table. Then he hears a scream from the living room. The boy rushes to the door, only to find Janet is gone. Turning around, he finds her standing at his back with a knife. The adults hear the scream and run in. Ed breaks into the kitchen, and finds everything in a mess, and the younger boy is crying, hiding in a wardrobe. But Janet is nowhere. Ed's assistant uses a sound detector to search for Janet, and finds her in a switch box. Face and body twisting, she snarls. Ed points the crossing toward her, to dispel Bill from her body, and carries her out of the box. Before they get rid of the panic, the female journalist comes up, and declares Janet pretended. She shows the video which she recorded from outside the kitchen. Janet was throwing kitchenwares and bending a knife, apparently intentionally and not possessed. It is the only evidence the church gets so far, showing Janet pretending to be possessed, and the aid to the family will be suspended. Meanwhile, Lorraine doesn't feel the existence of Bill anymore, so she and Ed leave. The sister asks Janet why she did that in the kitchen. Tears in her eyes, Janet answers the ghost demanded her do that, to let those people go. Otherwise, he will kill them all. When the Warrens are on the train back home, 2 tapes fall down to the floor from Ed's parcel, and make a crossing, which give a hint to Ed. He plays the 2 tapes respectively at the same time, and hears Bill crying for help. Suddenly Lorraine conjures Bill. Bill says he wanted to see his family, but they are all gone. He wants to leave but is trapped in this house. He rumbles that he is given and possessed, and she has been here when he was born. Before Lorraine asks Bill what he means, the ghost nun grabs him from the back. At this time Lorraine wakes up from the illusion, and realizes that Bill is used by the nun to weaken Janet's mind. Although Bill finally left, the real devil, the ghost nun, still haunts in the house. The Warrens immediately call the journalists, and they drive back to the house. On the way, Lorraine tells them what the old man said. Ed suddenly sees that he will dispel the devil if he knows the ghost nun's name. At Peggy's home, Janet is now fully possessed. Peggy takes the other 3 kids to leave home. When she returns, she finds the doors shut. Because of that, Ed tries to break in through the window. A sofa is thrown toward him and hits him to the ground. The groundwater reminds him of the broken valve in the cellar, so he rushes toward the cellar. When Lorraine follows him, the door is slammed. She then recalls the previous illusion and knows it was the death warning from the ghost nun. Worrying for her husband, she asked him not to enter the cellar. But Ed can't give up Janet. He digs a hole in the cellar ceiling and climbs up through it when the vapor from the broken heating burns his eyes. Outside in the yard, a tree is stricken by the lightning and falls onto the ground. The stub with a sharp end is exactly the same as she saw in her illusion, which killed her husband, an omen that her husband Ed is in life danger. Remembering the illusion, Lorraine realizes that she had scribbled the nun's name in the Bible. She hurries to the car, finds the Bible and restores the scribbled name, while Lorraine runs to the cellar and crawls in from the hole on the door. Ed comes into the bedroom following Janet's sound. Janet stands in front of the window with a lifeless face. Ed grabs her the moment she jumps down from the window. Seeing them both hanging on the window, Lorraine rushes to rescue them. At that moment, the ghost nun appears and blows her away against the wall. Lorraine cries out the nun's name and recites the spell to drive her back to hell. Stricken by the spell, the ghost nun loses her power and disappears. Then Lorraine rushes to pull back her husband and Janet from the window before it's too late. Holding each other, they cry, and the horrible night is over. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.